and a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audiences, my dear brothers and sisters, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the East-West Show. Jack Chow on the East-West, that is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry with 400 years of glorious history that is hand-forged by 10 generations of master craftsmen, which altogether stand for a testimony as a spectacular and a share of the royal glory. Back to the show. Today with me is my dear friend, Mr. Wei Lo, founder and CEO of California Sunshine Education Center. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, audience.
Very good. The fact that we get him here is to make an announcement. The announcement is that we started, as of now, will look into American system of education to see how we are doing. So the title of today's show is Our Education. Recently, what have you found? What have you done? And recent about SAT test, though, what have you found out and what have you done relatively?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic to start with today. And I have found that the most recently, the College Board, which is the launcher of the SAT as well as AP classes organizer, and announced that the most recent SAT test, some of them will be delayed and cancellation could be possibly down the road. So that's a big alert, and also that's a big thing for a lot of parents and students who participated the past weeks the SAT test. So what I did find is that that the devastation as well as the hesitation of the students has not been a single case. So I'm in the process of considering to offer something for the on behalf of students and families to the administration authority to do something on that. At this moment, it's the earliest stage.
What problem have occurred that relates to the SAT test?
Yeah, basically there are two incidences. Some of the students received the score last week already, which was on schedule, and according to their pronounced the SAT announcement schedule, and some of them received a letter from the SAT College Board stating that their test score will be delayed for 2 weeks. For the former situation, the students who received the SAT score earlier last week, they received a new message this morning stating that their score is withheld again. So there's no longer score posted on their on students' personal account. How serious it is. Think about it. If you're students, you had a score, you had your test score last week, and this morning when you go back to check your score, you found nothing over there. Instead, there's a letter from the College Board.
All right.
That's
in other words, it's not a wrong score. It's the delay of the score, and even to the delay of the score, it was withheld.
There was a delay, of course, of the score, never being published.
Okay.
And for those who had received their score last week,
obsolete. Oh no.
They basically got a blank.
Disregard that.
And basically stating that your score is pending.
In other words, they are reassess the score or what?
And basically, according to the letter that the students received from this College Board, from the College Board, stating that it would take another 2 weeks for them to get the score, during which time their score is being reviewed by the College Board. In this case, basically, it happened before.
Has it been a administration problem or
Good question.
or computer problem?
Good question. In the past, there are two implications behind this kind of occurrence. Number one is that there is a cheating that founded, so the whole class of test takers will be hold on for their test score. That's one incident. Another incident is that the technical problem caused some of the students in this class not being showed at that moment. That's two incidents. That's two implications at this moment based upon past experience. But what happened actually exactly to this test, which is on August 24th, is not known yet.
All right. Of course, we human beings can't live without making mistakes, right? But speaking of mistakes, there are big ones or small ones.
That's right.
To the average Joe and Sue, they might not understand this kind of mistake or problem, what will cause. In other words, how important that is. And by the nature of the problem, what is the damage?
I think that the causing of the results or the consequence of this kind of incidents to students and families are very severe. Think about the students who prepared 6 or 8 months, even a year for this test, and all of a sudden they are told that their test score is invalid. Think about the energy, time that students spend behind this preparation. And number two,
In other words, they're going to test again or what?
they're going to test it again. If they cancel the score, if the college board cancel the score,
They're going to test again.
they're going to test it again. They're going to
That's going to cause a lot of trouble.
cause a lot of trouble for the
Because as a student, if I did it right for the first time, I did it better for the first time though.
Yes.
I will stick to it. Why you would test me twice?
That's right, and that's the case of one of my close friend's son, who reached 1,570 in the most recent test, and the score was received early last week. The whole family was cheering and exciting about the test score, because you know that the 1,600 is the full score. And the kids reached 1,570, which is marginal from the full score, full house. And all of a sudden they received the cancellation letter from the college board this morning, said that this perfect score, close to perfect score, is no longer invalid.
In most of the cases, I don't know, the assessment of education result is kind of like how much. It is kind of like a competition, like in the field tracks.
That's right.
Right? So say I'm high jumping, right? I made it to 275. Accidentally, I made it to 276, for example. And you want me to test me twice, though, the second time.
And all of a sudden, your judge told me that score is no longer valid.
Yeah, and also in the life of an athlete, there's only one peak. Once the peak is reached, and you can never duplicate it.
That is correct. That's what we call it about the accidental success.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you are canceled.
You're talking about competition anyway,
That's
right? And then the same thing applies in the race field. So if I run 100 meters and I made it 9:47, for example.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that is now, but now let's say 9:7. And I made it this is a lifetime. That's my peak. You want me to repeat it the second time? No, I can't.
That's exactly the case for SAT.
Is it going to cause a lot of lawsuits?
I doubt, because in the past,
if I were the student, I were the one that you were describing now.
That's not.
I will file a lawsuit against them.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not practicing law, so I would not be able to answer that question in this moment. But it could be there's a consequence behind it.
All right, that's going to create a lot of mess, right?
That's right.
Okay, my dear friends, my lovely audiences, as we schedule for today, we want to talk about our education. And before we start with our education, though, we found with the college SAT system that we have not only once but twice made the same mistake, which may cause a lot. And as a matter of fact, the way I look at it is causing a lot, because lots of people, lots of kids they are not responding yet. If they do, there's going to be a big problem.
There's going to be a catastrophic situation.
All right. With me today is my dear friend, Mr. Wei Luo, founder and the CEO of California Sunshine Education Center. Let's take a short breakout. We come back, we touch base a little bit with the SAT system itself. Stay with us, please.
Everything expected. It's like St. John Wayne.
My name is Paul James. I'm host of English News.
And a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, my dear audiences. Welcome back to the show, Jack Chow on the East West, which is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated the brand of jewelry that has 400 years of glorious history, hand forged by 10 generations of the greatest master of craftsmen on the global earth, which altogether stand for a testimony to the spectacular and the share of the royal glory. Back to the show today. With me is my dear friend, Mr. Wei Luo, a wonderful educator who loves the community, who has done a great contribution, I would say, because I've been watching the activities of Mr. Wei Luo with his organization for so long that I believe lots of kids, lots of parents are benefiting from him. By that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack, for your comment.
All right. As an educator, of course, you know the system. To the average Joe, especially when you were talking about the college system in particular, or people came from China who never get a chance to understand that this system here, though, how much of an importance is the SAT system, the test system, to the education?
Basically, SAT together with another test, a standardized test, ACT, are the two prerequisites of the college entrance in the United States. In other words, basically, they are college doorkeeper. And if you want to go to the college, you have to go through the entrance door. And this SAT and ACT test basically is the doorkeepers. And happened to be that SAT test with history of almost 93 years this year already, the most predominant college entrance test in the United States. And so far there are about more than 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States recruit their first-year freshmen.
All over the United States.
All over the United States that recruit and admit their freshman class students based upon mainly one of the factors based upon the SAT test score of the students.
You mentioned this is a system of 93 or 94 years of history.
That's right.
During the 93 or 94 years of history, though, has the mistake that you just mentioned in the previous segment happened before?
To my research and study, that there are always incidents and accidents happening in the past in the 93 years history period, but the frequency and the severity of the incidents that happened in the past 2 or 3 years has never been seen in the history of SAT test. For example, the biggest college admission scandal in the United States. Everybody knows it, right? There are 33 family or parents being persecuted and trialed, and not some of them not persecuted yet. There are quite a few cases that found from those cases that families and parents have been using the fictitious test taker for their kids in the SAT test class.
So,
And that kind of cheating would have been never discovered if this case is not prosecuted.
once again, like I said, there are mistakes which are correctable or affordable to mend. Well, after all, we're only human, right? So there are, however, mistakes which are devastating, especially for young people. You're devastating this life of the young people. He or she may never be encouraged or have the guts to do it again.
It's going to be a big frustration for the family and the students. And more importantly is that even before the test or after the test, that the College Board, which is the organizer or provider of SAT test, did not take any effective administrative method to protect this kind of incidents from happening. That's
From happening again, right?
That's again. That's a big issue that caused my frustration too. So I think that's something need to be done to attaching that.
Has there been any kind of a protest or petition for somebody to either come out with the reasonable explanation or to be held responsible or even to resign or even to activate some kind of investigation?
So far, not yet. There's nothing from the news release that we have found that some method has been taken care of, or afterwards method has been taken care of.
Will that be any kind of that in the short?
I cannot answer that, but
in the short future,
as a educator, and also I am a member of certain circulations and certain circles of the family groups in the social media. That families and parents are very frustrated, and they probably gonna file some kind of a complaint to the SAT board or to the higher authority. But at this moment, nothing I have heard of yet.
Which is bad. This is very bad to learn, because you are here talking about a very worthy, reliable system that your family, your kids, if you're parents though, maybe you're here for that. You probably come across the Pacific Ocean all the way just for that.
That is correct.
And yet that's the exactly thing that fails you, and which is so devastating that probably nobody will ever fix it.
That's you raised up a very good point. That there are 4,000 students across the Pacific Ocean participated this last week's SAT test in the U.S. territory from China, and that's 4,000 families behind it. Think about the cost, energy, monetary cost of to the family, as well as the time and other burdens that the cost of the family and the students. That's a very catastrophic.
Oh, okay. Of course, I know that 93, 94 years in history, the system works, right? However, on the other hand, though, people are criticizing the Chinese education system for their having the nature of test score or even test oriented, right? And I have a feeling, especially these late years, for the past decades though, when lots of people coming in here, when all of a sudden cross street, the talk about the SAT, the standardized test, on and on, so on and so forth. So it looks to me that we are copying from China. aren't we?
I think that you have a good sense as a
I have
parent
I have a smell.
about how.
I have a smell. I said a kind of a smell that probably we're copying from China, or is China copying from us?
I think you have a very good instinct as a parent, as well as an educator, education carrier, attender. Excuse me. I think that you are right, because we have in development or social educational reform in this country have been in a tendency that scores as well as test preparation being the top and priority of the education system, especially the public education system in this country. That is not allowed, and I agree with you. The reason being that is for my study and observation is that since late 50s, that we have a tendency in this country. We have a tendency to compete with some superpowers in the other part of the world. First was Soviet Union, and in 1957, Soviet Union launched the first man-made satellite to the space.
57.
57. It's called a Sputnik, and everybody in its education field knows about the Sputnik syndrome in terms of the education reform involved. And that caused the nation's attention on the science and mathematics education in the public system.
The STEM. The STEM system.
STEM is later on, and we by the time we do not call it the STEM. We call it the science and math oriented education. And also, federal government allocates huge amount of money on addressing that issue, and that's caused us the catching up after the Soviet Union in the math as well as the science education in the public education system, which is good.
Well, does that mean that that we were once left behind by the Soviet Union in the space area?
In the space race area, that's right.
Yeah.
In the Cold War area, in some point we were just left behind the Soviet Union, what Soviet Union achieved in outer space. But once we realize there's a problem, there's an issue in that field, and we allocate the national effort on that part, and we catch it up. That's symbolized by the launch of first.
What did we do to catch up?
Basically, that's the Apollo 13 that we launched people to the and landed in the moon. That's after 10 years of strife. That's basically what it is. In a history that it proves to be working if we put money and energy as well as policy into certain field of education.
Okay, I understand. Of course, that's for the. Oh, by the way, it's not Apollo 13, Apollo 11.
Apollo 11.
Apollo 11.
Apollo 13 is a failure. Was a failure.
Okay.
That's
Anyway,
right. That's right.
We were talking about the fact that we used during the Cold War, we used to be left behind by Russia
for certain
in the space racing.
At a time, I would say at a time. That's right.
And then we look at our education system. We started to blame our education system.
We realized the gap.
We realized the gap, right?
That's right.
So, and was that the time the so-called Defense Education Act?
That's that's right. That's basically in because of the 1957 incidents. Satellite incidents caused us launched the education defense. National Defense Education Policy or Act in the second year.
The American Defense Education Act.
National Defense
Education Act. My dear friends, today with me is my lovely co-worker. I call him co-worker already, because together we go into the core of some profound issue. Mr. Wei Luo, founder and the CEO of California Sunshine Education Center. we are bringing a part of sunshine here because we're touching a little point in history probably has never been shown before. Stay with us, please.
Everything
We
is
have
expected to be
continue
straight.
to work
It's
on
like
it
the
now.
scenes on
My name is Paul James. I host English news here in
And a Golden Angel Award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends, my lovely audience. Welcome back to the show. Jack Chow on the East West Show, which is exclusively sponsored by Wolfers, the Belgian royal family designated brand of jewelry that has 400 years of glorious history. And the rings and the works whatsoever were hand-forged by 10 generations of the greatest master craftsmen on the global earth. Together, they stand for a testimony to the spectacular and the share of the royal glory. Back to the show, I'm here with my friend, Mr. Wei Luo, founder and the CEO of California Sunshine Education Center, himself as an educator, but he's the kind that he shares discoveries with us, with the community, and he move on to the next discovery, and it goes on and on and on. And by the way, for the past 5 years, he's been running a comparative test. I'm a product of the comparative literature, and he is probably doing the actual education comparison between China and the United States, by which he combines the Chinese curriculum at the same level or relevant level to the American curriculum at the same level, relevant level, to see if that works better, right? We weren't exactly at the point of talking about the comparison. We weren't exactly talking about the point at which we started to look into our education system, and we came out with a criticism with a big correction. That is the law, the federal law published in 1959 called the National Defense Education Act. Can you explain a little bit, please?
Yeah, basically, National Defense Education Act was the legislation act, a movement to address the issue that this country, we have education gap in science and math education in the public education system, schools. And after 10 years effort and strive, basically we catch up in the science and technology education, and by symbolized, as we just mentioned previously, that's symbolized by sending 3 astronauts to moon. And that's a big,
Which we did, of course.
that's a big progress that we made in this country's scientific and technology history. And because of the success, that basically leave a legacy to the educators, especially policyholders, policymakers of education, involved education, that if we put money on certain gap that we realize, we find it out, that we can make such good, huge progress in that finding. But unfortunately, sometimes the pendulum moves a little bit to the extreme side of it. And the most recent cases is that we emphasize much more about test score as well as the standardized tests.
Exactly.
That's unfortunate of it. And the symbol of
I
that.
share the same feeling about the same education reform, right? It is called, in history, called educational reform, just starting in the year of 1959. Of course, we were in the space area left behind by the Russia, the former Soviet Union, right? For only a time, right? Now, they were the first one to launch the man-made satellite. We were the first one who actually landed the astronauts on the moon. So you were once the leader, we were once the leader, which is okay. However, our Congress made it a law to blame our back then existing system of being too hypocritical, all right? Whether those of those intangible education.
I think there's a tendency on that. I do see what you have just stated in the real world of education system. And as a matter of fact is that in the past 50 years, every major education reform was initiated by non-educators.
All right. Another good point.
That's let me take for example. For the most recent education reform policy, we called it No Child Left Behind, NBLC. No Child, NCBL, whatever you call it.
That's
curriculum.
Go ahead.
And basically, it was initiated by the Association of National Governors. Not by the Association of Teachers Association or Administrators Association whatsoever. So it's basically the act was initiated by the education outsiders. For the consequence of this is that they just put a lot of things that they thought, outsiders thought important to education, to our kids, to our family, but as educator, as insiders, we thought that's something else. That is the oxymoron or contradiction that we encountered in education reform in this country.
That seems to be another issue. Well, but before we touch that though, we want to still finish the issue right now. We had been on just now. We had been starting 1959 criticizing those kind of hypocritic education, and we just to put an end to education like, say, moral education, like a philosophical education, like aesthetic education, about beauty, 美学 about beauty, right? So now, with all these, they kind of slowed down, either putting the secondary or third place, right? Whereas anything that can be monetized, in other words, to be cashed out right away.
Let me put my understanding about this phenomenon. And basically, for the consequence of 1958 Act, National Defense of Education Act, was that the federal government decided put out a certain amount of fund into our education system. Because you know that the funding from the federal level into our school system only takes about 10 or 15% to the most to the total education expenses in this country. So
From
not
the
a
state.
lot, not a lot. Most of them from the state and city and county.
Yeah.
So I would say that the federal government has lighter say on the education than the state and city governments. That's the reality that we face in this country. Number one, this is the background. And because the federal government put out that certain amount of money on the science and math education, and definitely the school system catch up in that point. There's no question about it. There's no denial about that. The problem is that when we put too much effort to this certain area and put that certain area in the spotlight and the focus of communities and other stakeholders all together in that point.
Altogether goes to your point.
That's right.
Our education is administered by non-educators.
That's right. That's
the problem.
That's the causal problem that you just mentioned, that because of the test score, test preparation is so important, the college preparation is so important. So leave the room away for those important part, virtual education, character education, and value system.
Gallantry,
because
value system.
Because we have only certain amount of hours for school.
Yeah.
What you can do?
Moral education, right?
As a matter of fact, my data shows that in certain point, it costs
Let
average.
me give you one small example. It might be the smallest of all examples. However, it works. 35 or 36 years ago, when I first landed on this land, I rode back to my friend. I said, here on the street, you never hear a horn. Right? Now what do you see? You hear horns everywhere. And you see the young people driving a turbo engine all the way, like there is no one on the street, like he is the only one on the street, like his family owns the gasoline company.
That's only on the surface, what you observed in
I
the
mean,
surface.
moral education
That's right.
failed here.
That's reflect.
Okay, now I give you the low-hanging pants, for example.
There's no question
Now,
about that.
low-hanging pants used to be boys, right? Now the low-hanging pants used to be the girls. And the last week, my family was eating in the restaurant, and my daughter was sitting on this side, facing out, right? And on the other table, there is one wearing the low-hanging pants, and a girl. You know what my girl said to me? She has to switch to sit over there. She can't take it. So I'm talking about moral education. We have a total failure here. We can't afford it.
That's a reality. That's a reality.
Yeah, I know. But
to-
I am talking about reality.
Yes.
Reality needs to be corrected. Reality needs to be criticized.
Let me tell you my solution. Let me find out. Do you know why?
Yeah.
Do you know why?
The answer is here. We're talking about the
Why?
National Defense Act.
Well, no, that's not a fault of national
Because
defense.
we corrected our traditional education by emphasizing only on the monetary education.
As I said, the federal emphasis only takes about
No.
10 to 15%.
Federal takes the lead, and the state followed. And the legislature, state politics followed. That's it.
But sometimes we have to make sure that we balanced our emphasis on all categories of education, of factors that involved
That
into
is the
education
most
process.
idealistic.
That's
That's the most idealistic.
Let me-
The fact is that we did that, we did this, and we kind of going either way.
we have to counterbalance education
All right.
factor.
Okay, my dear friends, let's take a short moment out. We look to have hit the nail on the head, and we will be still hitting when we come back. It is our education, our traditional education, the education for the past half a century, and they should be education. So hold on, we'll be right back.
Everything
Rebound.
is
We have
expected.
to continue to work
It's
on
like
it
the
now.
same strong ways.
My name is Paul James. I host English News every morning.
And a golden angel award ceremony.
Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the East-West Show. Jack Chow, your host. Back to the point. We were talking about our education as reality. We recalled our traditional education before 1958, 1959, and we are looking into the future with the reality, quote unquote. Where are we? What are we doing? What can we do? So with me is my dear friend, Mr. Wei Law. Maybe you have a solution, or less you have a diagnostics?
I think that I can agree with more what you just presented, the problem in moral education, virtual education in our system.
Yeah.
And my solution, I think that number one is that we have to give out a certain, lock out certain amount of the time for the moral education. And we have give away to the moral education in our college preparation classes, our test preparation classes, and make sure that students will have certain quality time locked for that kind of education factor. That's from education point of view. And also from the community point of view, we have to make sure that the long-term benefit for our kids to learn in our school, not only science, subjects, knowledge, but also the characters, virtues,
I agree.
and encouragement. That's more as equally important for success of students.
That's what we should be.
Definitely.
That's what we should do.
Definitely, the test is a reality. If you go to the college, if you go to the society, you cannot be a doctor, you cannot be a nurse without passing certain tests. You cannot pass a
You're right.
law.
You're right.
The test is a reality, part of our life. But how we can just make sure that a test is taken care of. In the same time, our moral education will be in a certain place where the importance is addressed.
I understand. You're talking about obviously solution. So in other words, what to do with the reality, right?
That's right. That's my solution.
Yeah, which is more important to me is that we have to recognize that for the past half a century, we've been doing wrong by following too much to the National Defense Education Act.
Well, that's your opinion. I respect that, but I have
we
a
are
different
paying
argument.
too much attention to the monetary education. We forgot our moral education. So what you're talking about should be based upon this criticism. Without realizing we've been doing wrong, your silver lining, your most ideological way will not work.
Well, it will work. It's the only way to address the issue, because
Even without recognizing we have been doing wrong?
There's no problem. Everybody, because if you talk to a teacher, a classroom teacher today, they realize, I just read an article that's wrote by a published in a very, very well-known magazine, the Atlanticers, the Atlantic Pacific, whatever the name, the title of the magazine. He stated that 57 of the students in his classroom thought that success, the students will take whatever it takes to be successful, meaning financially, without consideration of other issues, moral, virtual, spirits. That's a reality. How bad it is. 57 of the kids
agree with you.
would achieve the success. That's the situation.
That's exactly
So
why I get excited.
my point is that frontliners, meaning teachers in the classroom, they realize the problem already. But we have to make sure I think you and I, as a community and as a parents, we need to reach out to the policymakers, to the educators, education policymakers, our legislators, to address, to realize, to confrontate the problem, and to make efforts to address it.
Of course,
That's,
they have to do
that's
something.
the process.
All right. So that's why I say you have to base your idealistic construction upon the fact that we convince ourselves that we had been doing wrong.
Jack,
corrections are necessary.
That's logical.
Without saying that,
That's logical. There's no question about it. But we have to be specific.
I know. Okay. Specifically, let's do this. Let me give you an example. Okay, now, without having created teaching positions in high school on philosophy, for example, right? You will not promote lots of students going into university to learn philosophy. You're right?
That's not realistic, and that is not practical.
No. That's why I'm saying as legislator, they have to create laws to put philosophy, put moral study into high school so that you create teaching job.
Jack,
let me tell you. So that it will function. The other end, you will encourage young people to go to school to learn that subject.
Jack, let me tell you, that will create big problem. just one thing about religious leaders. How do they regard this philosophy to be justice to their belief of the value?
Okay,
their
go
philosophy.
ahead. Go ahead. You
So
can
we-
teach.
That means that diversity of multinational and multi-ethnicity has to be addressed.
No, I'm not going to argue to you with you. All right.
That's not
I
realistic.
am talking about.
Let me tell you,
You can
that's
do the
not
same
real-
thing. You can do the same thing. You can teach Christianity. You can teach Muslims.
No, that's against
You
the
can teach
Constitution.
anything.
That's
in the school.
no, that's not.
Why not?
Not in the public school. That is constitutional incorrect. Teaching any religions in our public school system.
Well, I don't think so.
That's the
I don't think
Constitution.
so. I know.
If you're doing
I
that,
know.
that's
even
that's,
Constitution can
that's
be
against
amended.
the Constitution.
Even
Wow.
our Constitution has been amended for 27 times.
Okay, that's
All
a big
right.
issue. That without
That's why we have amendment number
Beyond our
1,
talk,
amendment
beyond
number
discuss.
2, amendment number 3, which means that it is something amendable. All right.
that's even more beyond
Okay.
our reachable.
All right. Anyway, so I don't know why we argue. Okay, you and I, we share the same ground, and yet we end up arguing.
We're
I
arguing
am
about
only-
the system. How
I
to
am
correct
only
the system.
talking about-
You and I have a different
Okay,
view
to do
in terms
something,
of how to correct the
do
system.
something to reverse reality, you have to base yourself on the ground of criticizing the past. The past has been too practical.
I'm a pessimist.
We have to drag ourselves
in terms
out
about
from
the system change.
practical
We cannot
education
change.
system. You don't
It's-
even know what you're talking about.
No, you don't.
Well, I don't
I
know
know.
why we're arguing.
I do. You don't.
All right, my dear friends. It looks that it takes some time, some efforts to not only to be understood by everybody, even between the host and the guest. It needs some efforts. Well, anyway, we have lots of time. So much for that today. Thank you very much, my dear friends, for watching. And to my guest, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, the audience.
Bye-bye.